Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are peering into the great unknown, but maybe with a surprising amount of clarity.
I hope so.
We're talking about foreknowledge, the idea, really, of possessing knowledge about future events.
And we're not just talking about, a weather forecast guessing the rain.
No, definitely not. This is more like a specific, total and supposedly infallible awareness of outcomes before they even happen.
It's a fascinating concept, isn't it, foreknowledge? Because it seems so abstract, but it really cracks open these fundamental questions about power, agency, existence itself.
So what's our mission for this deep dive?
Well, we've got our sources lined up, and the goal is to unpack the implications across theology, philosophy, and even surprisingly modern neuroscience.
Okay.
But focusing on that core dilemma it always comes back to.
And let's just jump right into that core dilemma, because honestly, it feels like the foundation for everything else, historically and today.
It really is.
Does infallible divine omniscience, God knowing everything, fundamentally contradict human free will? Specifically, libertarian free will, the ability to genuinely choose otherwise.
That's the crux of it. It's the ultimate metaphysical conflict, you could say. I mean, think about it. If you accept the premise that some divine being knows every single choice you will ever make,
From listening to this right now.
exactly, to huge life decisions years down the line, well, the question becomes inescapable, doesn't it?
Can you really say you were free to choose differently in that moment?
Mm-hmm. And that inherent tension, that's what gets called theological fatalism.
Okay, theological fatalism. Let's unpack that a bit. If we define it as this problem, that a deity knowing the future invalidates our free will.
Yeah.
Philosophers have been wrestling with this for ages.
Millennia, really.
Yeah.
And they tend to fall into, broadly speaking, two camps.
Right.
So on one side, you've got the compatibilists.
Right.
These are the thinkers trying hard to reconcile God knowing the future with humans actually being autonomous.
How do they manage that?
Well, they often argue that God's knowledge doesn't cause your actions. It just observes them perfectly. So your choice is still free, even if the outcome is already known to the observer. They essentially say the arguments for fatalism have a logical flaw in them somewhere.
Right. Observation isn't causation.
That's the line of thought. But then on the other side...
You have the ones who say, nope, can't have both.
Exactly. Those are the incompatibilists. They argue that if the future is infallibly known, then it's fixed, it's settled.
So you can't logically hold on to both a strong idea of divine foreknowledge and a strong idea of free will, meaning the genuine ability to have done otherwise.
Correct. They say one of those concepts has to give. You either have to abandon it or, radically redefine it.
And this isn't some new debate. It was huge in early Christian thought. You mentioned Augustine and Luther earlier.
Absolutely, central figures.
Yeah.
Though their stakes were maybe a bit different. Augustine, for instance, was deep in debates with Pelagius about grace and salvation.
Right. The nature of the human will.
Yes. Augustine argued that because of humanity's fallen sinful state, our will is corrupted. It's basically incapable of making truly good, morally significant choices on its own.
So freedom needs help.
For Augustine, yes. True moral freedom, the ability to choose real good, absolutely requires divine grace to step in and heal or restore the will. He really emphasizes divine action as necessary for any genuine moral good.
Which definitely puts human autonomy into question.
Deeply. And then Luther, centuries later during the Reformation, took that line of thought even further, didn't he?
Much further, it seems.
Oh, yes. Luther's commitment to divine sovereignty was, radical. He fought hard against the idea prevalent then that human actions, or even a tiny act of will, could contribute anything to salvation.
So no human contribution at all.
In his view, particularly laid out in The Bondage of the Will, the human will isn't just sick, it's effectively a slave. It's either enslaved to sin or freed by God's grace. There's no middle ground of independent choice in that spiritual realm.
Yeah, it sounds like a complete rejection of libertarian free will, at least regarding salvation.
It really was. For Luther, salvation is entirely an unmerited gift, a unilateral act of God.
Wow. It feels like we're caught in this endless philosophical loop, doesn't it? The ultimate causality problem.
And it's not over. Contemporary scholars, you mentioned William Lane Craig, William Hasker, others, they're still refining these arguments, still debating.
Because the implications are just massive.
They are. And if we sort of shift our gaze beyond just Western philosophy, look at world religions. We see how interpreting omniscience leads to really different views on human agency.
We touched on the Abrahamic traditions, Islam, Christianity, where divine omniscience often covers all human actions. Which can lead towards determinism, right?
It often does. That tension becomes particularly sharp when you look at claims of, say, divine justice.
How so?
Well, our source material points to examples, like passages in the Quran that draw a stark contrast between believers and idolaters, sometimes describing non-Muslims as destined for judgment.
So if the outcome is known, even decreed beforehand.
It raises these incredibly difficult questions about fairness, about justice. It seems to make human choice almost irrelevant to your ultimate destiny, if that destiny is already fixed.
That model really seems to prioritize the divine plan over the individual's moral struggle.
It can certainly be interpreted that way. Now, compare that to Eastern systems, like those built around dharma and karma. How do they handle this?
Yeah, systems where destiny seems tied to action and consequence. Do they just see freedom differently?
They offer a really striking contrast. In dharmic traditions, Hinduism, for example, the concepts of dharma, meaning right conduct, and karma, action and its consequences, they're actually designed to preserve individual autonomy.
But isn't karma often seen as fate?
That's a common misunderstanding. It's not really fate in a fixed sense. It's more like a moral operating system. Your present situation is, yes, a result of past choices.
Okay.
But crucially, your future is still shaped by the choices you make now.
So it's not fatalistic. It's more like radically responsible.
Precisely. The focus shifts towards compassion, towards the possibility of redemption, through your own efforts, through self-realization and spiritual practice. It's not about condemnation based on some fixed external decree.
It internalizes the source of destiny then. It's about moral causality within the person.
Exactly. And Sikhism offers another interesting perspective, too.
How does that fit in?
Well, Sikhism, founded by Guru Nanak, posits a God who is formless, transcendent. And this leads to a belief that divine intervention isn't deterministic.
Meaning humans have real choice.
Yes, genuine moral choice capacity. The emphasis is strongly on individual devotion, on the effectiveness of human effort in seeking spiritual truth. It's a very dynamic picture of the human-divine interaction.
So we've got the ancients debating this sort of static, total, divine foreknowledge. But now things get really interesting because modern science suggests our own brains are creating a kind of dynamic micro-foreknowledge constantly.
Right. Let's talk about that scientific twist. Neuroscience, specifically predictive coding theories.
Okay, predictive coding. What's the core idea?
We're shifting from philosophy to biology here. And the basic idea is that your brain doesn't just passively react to information coming in from your senses.
It doesn't.
No. It operates more like a sophisticated predictive machine. It's actively, constantly trying to anticipate what the world is going to throw at it next.
Okay, so it's always guessing. How does that work?
It continuously generates hypotheses, predictions about incoming sensory data. Its main goal seems to be minimizing surprise, minimizing uncertainty.
What's the mechanism?
It's quite elegant, actually. The brain builds this complex model of the world based on everything it's learned, its prior beliefs, you could say.
Right.
Then, when the actual sensory data arrives, sight, sound, touch, the brain compares that data to its prediction.
And if they don't match?
If they don't match, it computes a prediction error, a signal that basically says, whoa, that wasn't what I expected. And crucially, it uses that error signal to update its internal model to make better predictions next time.
Okay, so if I reach out expecting to touch something smooth, but it's rough, that surprise, the error, helps my brain learn, okay, that object is rough for the future.
Exactly that. It's learning through prediction error. And here's a fascinating part. This isn't just for external senses like touch or sight.
No, what else?
This predictive mechanism extends powerfully to interoceptive signals.
Interoceptive, meaning?
Meaning signals from inside your own body, your heart rate, your breathing, digestion, that general sense of physical well-being or unease. Your brain is constantly predicting those internal states, too.
Wow.
And when the prediction of an internal state goes wrong, say, your heart races unexpectedly, that prediction error heavily influences your emotional processing, how you feel.
So from this scientific angle, foreknowledge isn't some static awareness of destiny out there.
Not at all.
It's more like a dynamic biological process of anticipation happening inside us all the time, guiding our physical reactions and even our emotions.
It's an anticipatory mechanism, fundamentally, not just a reaction. And this isn't just abstract theory. It has direct relevance for you, the listener, especially concerning mental health.
How so?
Well, researchers are increasingly connecting this predictive process to conditions like anxiety and depression. Think of your brain's predictive system like a poorly calibrated thermostat.
Okay.
If it's constantly generating maladaptive predictions, maybe persistently over-predicting threats in the environment, or anticipating negative internal states like fatigue or dread.
Then the resulting error signal, the mismatch between prediction and reality, isn't helpful learning anymore.
Right. That constant state of erroneous prediction is the anxiety or the depressed state.
Mm.
The illness in this framework is partly about living in a reality shaped by faulty, negative anticipation, by a kind of skewed internal foreknowledge.
That really makes the link between our mental state and this idea of prediction incredibly tangible.
Wow. Okay, so shifting from that internal microscopic view back out to the larger cultural stage, foreknowledge has always been fuel for drama, hasn't it? Oh, absolutely. Irresistible dramatic tension. The classic cultural example has to be Sophocles' Oedipus Rex.
The ultimate tragedy of fate.
Exactly. The famous paradox is that Oedipus's desperate attempts to escape the horrifying prophecy that he'd kill his father and marry his mother are the very actions that lead him to fulfill it.
It perfectly illustrates that sense of tragic inevitability that often gets tied to knowing the future. You can't escape it.
It suggests that knowing somehow locks it in. But stepping back into the theological arena, probably the most sophisticated modern attempt to bridge this gap, to reconcile divine knowledge and human freedom, is the whole controversy around Molinism.
Molinism. Okay, what's the core idea there?
Molinism is this really clever philosophical attempt to solve the age-old dilemma. It introduces the idea that God possesses not just simple foreknowledge, but also something called middle knowledge.
Middle knowledge, what's the difference?
Okay, so simple foreknowledge is God knowing what will happen. Factually, the host speaker will have coffee tomorrow morning.
Got it. Factual future.
Middle knowledge, though, is defined as God's knowledge of what any free creature would choose, freely, under any possible set of circumstances.
So, not just what I will do, but what I would have done if things were different.
Precisely. God knows not just that you will have coffee, but that you would have chosen tea instead if, say, you had run out of coffee beans. God knows every possible hypothetical choice for every person in every conceivable scenario.
That sounds incredibly complex.
Yeah.
But I can see the appeal. It seems like it allows God to plan the universe using knowledge of how free beings would react without actually forcing their choices.
That's exactly the aim. It tries to preserve both robust divine sovereignty and genuine human freedom. But you mentioned it's controversial. There are major objections, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
big ones. The core criticisms, often voiced by philosophers like William Hasker you mentioned earlier, tend to focus on two main things.
Yeah.
First, just how is this middle knowledge actually coherent? Is it even a possible type of knowledge? That's a deep philosophical puzzle.
And second, perhaps more importantly for many theologians, this whole concept is seen by critics as undermining traditional ideas about divine sovereignty, God's ultimate authority and control.
How does knowing a hypothetical choice undermine God's authority? It sounds like it enhances it, giving God more information to work with.
But the criticism is that it makes God's decree, God's plan, somehow contingent on or reactive to what humans would hypothetically do.
I see. So God isn't just deciding unilaterally, he's deciding based on these hypothetical human choices.
That's the concern. It seems to grant a kind of explanatory priority or authority to these hypothetical human decisions, even if only in God's planning phase. And this is a huge issue, particularly within traditions like the Reformed tradition, which strongly emphasizes that God unilaterally and unconditionally determines all events through his divine decree.
So Molinism challenges that core belief.
Fundamentally, this difference over middle knowledge causes significant doctrinal divergence. It's one of the really sharp disagreements in contemporary Christian philosophy and theology.
Right. So after all this, what does it all mean for us? We started with that fundamental problem, theological fatalism. Then we saw how different world religions handle this tension between destiny and autonomy quite differently.
Big contrast there.
And then we dove into the science, finding that our own brains are these incredibly complex, predictive, anticipatory machines.
So the synthesis here, I think, is that foreknowledge isn't just one simple thing. It's more like a dynamic stress test.
A stress test for what?
For our definitions of time, of knowledge itself, and definitely of agency or freedom, whether we're talking about an omniscient God or our own nervous system, that tension between what's anticipated and what's freely chosen, it just keeps coming up as the central challenge.
That makes sense. It's the recurring question. Which brings us then to our final provocative thought for you, the listener, to maybe carry forward from our discussion today.
Okay, so we spent some time on how the human brain seems to operate. It learns and adjusts its predictive models by computing error. It relies on surprise, on uncertainty, on the unforeseen to refine its understanding of the world.
Right. The prediction error drives the learning.
Exactly. So here's the thought. If our primary mechanism for acquiring knowledge and adapting even biological knowledge fundamentally relies on the existence of the unforeseen circumstance, the unexpected event that generates that crucial error signal, does that very necessity of surprise, of things not going as predicted, fundamentally challenge the classical philosophical idea of true, total, infallible foreknowledge, even divine foreknowledge, as a completely static, fixed, unchangeable concept? If knowing requires learning from error, can knowledge ever be truly complete and static?
Something to ponder.
Something to ponder until our next deep dive.